So what did we learn yesterday? How did it go with Christy? The other Christy.
It went great with me and her.
Yeah, definitely went good. I like what she was saying about like visual design and stuff.
Me too.
Yeah, so visual design is a whole other field, and something that we have had students come through the entire program, get to the end of it and go, you know, the coding stuff was fine and all, but what I really like doing was doing the design before the coding step, which is a completely fine step, completely fine result of the program. Christy is unique in that she's got a lot of development experience in addition to her design experience, right? And so there are a lot of great designers who think they are good developers, and there are a lot of great developers who think they are good designers. There are very few people who are actually good at both, and Christy is one of those few that straddles that gap so well. So I was very excited to have her come in and teach a class, not only to expose you to the design principles that I am certainly not qualified to teach, but also kind of coming through it with the perspective of development in mind, right? And so it's interesting to think through like the grid system, right? The grid system isn't something really that you would think of as a designer. You would think, oh, I just want to lay things out. But as a designer, knowing that your designs are going to developers would love for that design to already be done using the grid system. And so working with designers very much part of the job, even when it's only wireframes, but understanding kind of the flow of the process. Anything else from yesterday that stood out? Any light bulb moments? Anything on the portfolio project that you have questions about, or you feel like you're making good progress, or you feel stuck at?
When she and I talked, because of what she presented before we talked, it made me realize that I need to scale back on some of these colors on my portfolio site. But if I want, and then like some of the stuff that I wanted to creatively, like I wanted this to represent me, that I could take that information and put it into the blog, like all the different colors and the different information. So that was what I got from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went for a very bold design in that portfolio with lots of colors. That's not necessarily a good thing always. But hopefully that was a starting point for you, right? To figure out either, hey, I'm kind of swamped with HTML right now. I just want to get a site up. I'll use the assignment as is, or use this as a launching off point for you to say, you know, hey, what I really want to do is create a new site from scratch. I want to go back to that one that I found. I want to go rebuild that one. And that is also completely okay. I think Christy made a great point in that your first portfolio site is not going to be your last portfolio site. You're going to want to go back and every couple of years update it. I had one that was actually very similar to Larry's typing animation, where it typed in full stack developer and then cleared that out, and then typed in mentor and cleared that out. And so I've gone through, I'm probably on the 6th generation of my portfolio site right now. And my portfolio site doesn't really even have projects on it, right? It's just a placeholder. So we're actually going to touch on blogging starting today, because we're going to dive into our capstone a little bit coming up. So that is next in class. Anything else from yesterday? Anything else from the week so far? We are, yeah, go ahead, Tiffany.
I'm sorry, Max, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not in front of my computer at this exact moment. I had to run and grab my son's medicine. But remember when we were doing on the portfolio on our site down at the bottom where we've got the cards where we do the screenshots of our projects, right?
Yes.
I kept having an issue with my cards like overlapping. So they tried to help me last night. And I remember when we were going through the code with you at one point, you were talking about like on the actual coding, there was like a width equals like an 18 REM or something like that. And you said it automatically gets put there, but didn't you have us delete that?
I did, yes. So if you delete out the width 18 REM, What it should do is size to the full width of the column, but you do need to make sure the cards are in their own independent columns.
Oh, so the first card seemed fine. It was the third card that was overlapping on the second one. So that must be the problem then.
Yeah, so I would check your column widths, make sure that the div tags are opening and closing. The one gotcha with the grid system is it's very easy to accidentally put a column in a column when you meant to put a column next to another column. So I would check that, make sure the cards before the div class equals card, that you've got a div class column, and that those are closing out in the right order. And then if you're still stuck on it, let me know during break, and we can take a look.
Okay, all right, I appreciate it.
Perfect. Anything else from yesterday, or light bulb moments, or up until this point? Because really, we've only got 2 days left in HTML and CSS.
I have one quick question about fonts.
Sure.
When we load in like the Google fonts, and it's up in the head of the page, does any page that uses that font have to have it imported at the head of the page?
It does, yeah. Unfortunately, there's no real notion, surprisingly, of reusable HTML. So you can't just say, hey, here's this head.html file. Just go ahead and drop it in on every page that, in my project. There's unfortunately no way to do that in HTML, which is kind of surprising. However, we will be taking a look. We'll be spending 3 weeks in React. And React does have that ability to reuse, they call them components, across different pages, so that you are able to have one page with one index.html with one head tag up at the top. And those links will apply no matter what page you end up going on. It's called a SPA, a single page app, SPA. And we'll be diving into that, I want to say week 12-ish, somewhere around there. So we will have a solution for that, but for right now, yes, you do have to put that link tag on any page using the font.
All right, thanks. Looking forward to React then.
React is a interesting breakthrough, and I went back and forth on Capstone, but I'm going to dive into that in 1 second. Anything else for this up until this point that we want to touch on? No? Okay, we're going to keep going then. So one thing
Nicole has a question. Sorry, the little button didn't work on the
gotcha.
Oh no, I was just saying no, there was nothing that I could think of. And then I was just talking about Christy yesterday and how she had helped me with my portfolio and the colors and what she thought was best, and how she changed my portfolio around a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, it's amazing how big of an idiot a developer can come in and say, here's a color palette tool, have fun, and then go run streaming. So I'm glad that Christy was able to come in and clean up after me. Awesome. Anything else? Cool. So we have been working internally at Hack Upstate to improve on getting our capstone started. So before we do, one of the pieces of feedback that I had was, hey, this all looks great, but there are a lot of different projects. Can we just, can we identify all the different projects that are going on here? So I thought it was worth breaking that down before we get into our capstone. So everything that you guys have been exposed to so far has been either an in-class project or a homework project, right? So think about the Netflix site or the feedback form or the weather app, all things that either we did in class and then you caught up on, or that you coded along as we were working on it in class. Those don't go anywhere. Those will continue on throughout the entire curriculum, continue to be project-based learning. What we are going to start today is the class project. And that is something similar in that you're welcome to code along with me during class if you would like, but you don't need to turn this one in. The point of this class project is basically a class capstone. So you can think of this as a group project that we're all going to work on together so that we can review all the concepts that we've learned throughout all the project weeks. So again, not something you have to code along with me on, but if you find it helpful and you find that practice helpful, you are welcome to. And so the whole point here on the class project is so that you can see kind of, if I were doing a capstone, this is the capstone as an instructor that I would be doing. So the third project is your solo capstone. So everyone will pick a capstone. We're going to go into the review document in a second and touch on some high-level things of what a capstone is and what it should include. But basically, I wanted to separate out here the three different types of projects. So there's in-class, or what we're doing for homework. There is the class project, which is, hey, this is an example of how you could get this concept to work in a project. And then the third one will be your capstone itself, right? And so we're going to have some check-in requirements for that, and we'll go into there. But wanted to identify the three different types of projects. Any questions on that? Okay, so let's dive into the capstone. I am not going to read verbatim on this. I don't know why it's off-centered because there are no comments, but okay, Google, just be a little weird there. So capstone is a full stack project. I'm well aware that you don't know what full stack is or haven't touched the back end or the database yet. That is okay. The point of the capstone is to be full stack and that you continue to work over it over the course of the program. So we had some feedback from cohort 2 of you're starting the capstone too early, right? We don't understand what these concepts are yet. We don't have any experience building that into a project. So that's why we don't touch on the capstone until week 5, because we want to get your feet wet, right? We want you to understand HTML and CSS and actually be able to build a couple projects before you dive into your capstone. The capstone is meant to be a project that you're doing your own time management on, right? Now that you're in the swing of class and understanding how much time that takes and how much time the homework takes, now we're just adding one final thing onto that, and that is this capstone project. So your idea is totally up to you. Caitlin in Careers in Code cohort 1 worked on the open data portal and making trash day information more accessible. We had Karen in cohort 1 is a big archer and wanted an app to be able to track her scores so that when she shot at target, she was able to keep like a running tally of her score. So Karen built that. In cohort 2, we had Ariel build a COVID-specific dating app, right, where you could view profiles and swipe left and right, but you could see their vaccination status a little bit more easily. And it's funny because that was a very novel idea at the beginning of the cohort. And by the time we got to the end of the cohort, I think every single dating app had added a vaccination status as like an optional, profile line. These capstone ideas can really be wide ranging. And so taking Hack Upstate back to its roots, Hack Upstate was initially founded to do these 24 or 48-hour hackathons, right? Where you come in, you tend to not get a ton of sleep, you pick a project idea, and then you just run at it full speed. Obviously, we're not expecting you to do your capstone project in 24 hours overnight right at the end of the project. So your idea, think about what you're passionate about, right? We had some students say, I really love Central New York. There are a ton of events going on and those events are hard to find. So I want to build a project that allows me to see different events going on in different regions of New York. So this can be a pretty wide-ranging project, but what you want to start thinking about is, I want to build some website or some app that is storing information. The app needs to be able to do all CRUD operations, which means create, read, update, and delete. So there's going to be some form somewhere on the page And you may find that that's as simple as a comments feature, right? I just want to allow users to be able to comment on the posts that I'm putting out. But you do want to think more web app than website. So more about storing information, updating things in a database, making that whole flow work. So I'm going to give the example project, which is going to be our class project, and that's actually what we're going to be working on in the next 2 days. So don't worry if you have no idea what you want to work on, because we do have project examples in here. And so Jesse has pulled links of all of the Hack Upstate hackathon project submissions. You can take a look at those. And you can also take a look at previous projects done at other coding boot camps, because this capstone project idea is certainly not unique to Careers in Code. So we've got links to all of those. I do want to touch on something I scrolled past here, which is the MVP, the minimum viable product. And this is probably the most important thing to keep in your head of you're going to want to build an awesome app, and it is going to take probably a year to build it. And we don't obviously have a year to build it. So minimum viable product, the MVP, means that we're building the smallest product that we can, but that is also having all of the features that need to make it the app viable for customers to use it. And when we say customers, we're pretty vague here, right? It can be friends, it can be family, it can be other CIC students, it could be a specific target demographic that you're going after, whatever it is, that's completely fine. But the point of the MVP is identifying a list of features and saying, do I really need this for the first version of the app to work? And so we're going to go through the whole SDLC, taking it all the way back to week 1, the software development lifecycle, right? Of going through planning and understanding requirements, going through design, getting into development, and then also towards the end of the program, touching on those other phases, right? Of testing and deployment and all of that fun stuff. So there are a ton of resources in this document, and I have created a homework assignment for tonight that is due by tomorrow for a chance just to review this document. We are not going to require you to lock into your idea until the end of week 6. So you not only have this weekend to think about it, but all of next week and next weekend to think about it. And then we've got a form for you to fill out on your project ideas. So I do want to just touch on that for 1 second. In Canvas, there is a homework assignment under week 5 that says review the capstone doc. This first link is the document that I was just screen sharing. That's the homework assignment for tonight, to read through it, to see if you have any questions, to start formulating a project idea. And then the only homework for tonight is, what questions do you have? What are you thinking on the capstone? Do you have any initial ideas? This initial capstone information form is not due tomorrow. That is not going to be due for an entire week. So this form asking, what is your project name? Explain your project. Try and do a shorter summary of it. All of that, I just want to get in the plant in the back of your head. You don't have to fill this out yet, but I wanted to expose you to it to know what the next steps are on the capstone. So just wanted to touch on that for a second. Okay, I'm going to take a breath there. Anyone have questions about MVP yet, or general capstone idea questions? The next 2 days, we are going to get started on the first steps that you will take on your capstones in the next couple of weeks. Okay, don't worry, I got decaf. This energy level will not persist until the end of the night. Okay, so we've got previous capstones in here. We've got previous hackathons, and we have some examples in here. Now, this is a question that we did not answer in cohort 1 and caused a ton of problems. And so in cohort 2, instead of saying, here are all of these different options and here are all the different ways of building a capstone, we narrowed it down and we said, hey, you should really build a capstone in the stack that we are teaching, which is going to be PostgreSQL, Express, React, and Node. Now, you may be saying, well, that's great, Max, but I don't know what any of those names or words are yet. And that's okay, because we're going to get into the next section of the document, which is what we're expecting, right? So this is broken down into project week. We are in project week number 1. We have 4 project weeks total, plus a 5th one at the end, solely focused on Capstone. So if you review the bullet points here, again, I'm not going to read word for word from the document, you should see, hey, I actually might know how to do some of those or most of them. And so we are hoping that between now and the next project week, which is week 11, you start kicking around your capstone. You start thinking about, well, maybe I can design some pages. Maybe I can get some HTML together. Maybe I can link some tags. Maybe I can just take an initial stab at my project. And if you're thinking there's no way I can do that, that's okay. The next 2 days, we're going to be focused on our class project, and we're going to go through all of the steps you will also be going through on your capstone. So by the time we get to week 2, project week 2, we get a little bit more interactive. We get a little bit more JavaScript in there. We can start getting some data showing up on the page. We can start pulling in some outside information. And then we get to project week 3, which is not far after project week 2, and we start having fun in React. We start being able to take pieces of our interface and rebuild them in React to be more interactive, to make it easier for data to show up on the page, to get not just our vanilla JavaScript working, our plain JavaScript working, but also working in a framework and making it a little bit easier to reuse our code and build out components. From there is a big jump, because then we get into the full stack project week, right? So now all of a sudden, this app is not living just in your browser. It's going to live partly on a server, and there's going to be some data stored there. And we're going to get into making the app work for multiple users. We're going to have data stored in the database flowing all the way through to your front end. And we're going to make it so when a user posts something on your site, another user can actually see it, right? So part of that is DevOps and getting it deployed. But that is when, in my personal opinion, when the program really gets fun. But you will notice this is week 20, so we're nearing the end. The thing that I didn't put on here and probably should have is that there is a project week number 5. It's not officially designated a project week, but it is, I was going to say an inappropriate phrase, it is full steam ahead on your capstone for that final week, right? Because all of this results in a final presentation. And that final presentation is done at your graduation. It is a 6-minute presentation, not only on your capstone, but the journey that you went on to get your capstone complete, right? So no one really cares about the individual lines of code or that place that you got stuck and it ended up just being a semicolon. Or what people at your graduation are going to want to hear is your journey throughout the boot camp and pouring all of those lessons into this capstone. So this capstone is not just another assignment. Hopefully it's where you can take your passion of all of this new material that you're learning and apply it to something that's your own baby, right? So the one caveat I will say on this is do not lose sleep over your final presentation. There are a lot of students that get nervous about presenting, that have some stage fright. None of that matters, right? We will have plenty of time in the final week of the program to go through some presentation steps, to work on your presentation, to go through all of that. Right now, this is all about ideation, and shortly thereafter, it's going to be all about implementation and practicing on this. You're going to make mistakes on your capstone. That's okay. And the idea may evolve. You may get halfway into this and go, I can't believe I thought this was a minimum viable product. There are 15 features I need to scrap here, and I'm changing my entire mind, and I'm going to do this instead. That is also okay. This is your personal project. It is going to be living and breathing. With that said, we are going to be checking in on you along the way. So we already have a one-on-one requirement every other week. We are going to layer onto that one-on-one and just check in on your capstone. How's it going? What did you get done since the last time we checked in on your capstone? What class concepts are you stuck on that you can't get working in your capstone? And what are your next steps? That journey can be documented on a technical blog post. So, however, there are also other options. The blog post, I know, got one of our graduates a job because the company came in and interviewed her and felt like they understood her developer journey throughout the boot camp. They felt like they connected with her a little bit more, and ultimately that got her a job. So I would encourage you document this as you go, because when you get to the end of it, you're going to be like, well, cool, I made this whole project and I spent hours and hours on it, but I forgot what it was like on the first day of working on this with my VS Code cursor blinking at me and figuring out where to go from there, right? So documenting as you go is a great option. It is not required for the class. And if you find that you're not a great writer, but you prefer to record a quick video and throw it up on a YouTube channel, that's a great idea. If you want to podcast through this, even if you think no one else is going to listen to it, if you want to just spend 30 minutes in front of a microphone, just talking through what you're going through, right? That is also completely fine. The one request that I do have is if you decide to do any of this journey documentation, no matter what form it takes, share it with your fellow students, because I think you will be surprised at how many of you guys are interested in what each other is doing and kind of going through that journey together. So for future project weeks rolling forward, the first 3 days are going to be work on the class project. They're going to be taking all of these concepts listed out in these project weeks and applying it to the class project, right? The group project that we're all working on. And I will get to that idea in 1 second. The last day is going to be open office hours, right? So it's going to be, where are you guys at? Where are you stuck on your project? Do you need help with the setup? What other concepts are you not getting, and touching on it? But because we are obviously just starting the capstone now, the next 2 days are going to be class project oriented. And by the time we get to week 11, we're going to have several one-on-ones individually, checking on your progress, making sure your idea is starting to form, and going from there and implementing not only these bullets, but also hopefully some of these bullets into your project. Final presentation, feedback, agile. The last thing I will touch on, and then I will open it up for any questions, is make sure you're investing in your project management here. Make sure that you're staying on top of it. I will be setting up a Trello board tonight, and we can start documenting some of these requirements and understanding how we will manage this capstone to make sure that pieces of it are not forgotten. So I will be touching on that later tonight. There are some great quotes in here, like "fake it till you make it," or this other one I have not heard, but like a lot more of "believe it until you can achieve it." You're going to have imposter syndrome on this project at some point. You're going to come into this project and be like, there's no way I can actually make an app by the end of this. But every single student who has walked that line at graduation has completed the app. And sometimes it is not as functional as they would like, and they find just the small little piece that they can demo. Sometimes we get blown away and we think students aren't really spending a lot of time on it, and we're amazed at how much they have done on this app. So hopefully the monthly check-ins, at least the monthly check-ins on the one-on-one, are a good way to report out your progress. But if you are still feeling like you have no idea where to start, that is okay. Read over this document. Like I said, there are a lot of links in it. Do your homework for tonight, which is due tomorrow, which is just dumping some thoughts into, I read this document and here are my questions. Here's what I'm thinking. Just give me kind of a mind dump on that assignment. With that said, we are going to dive into the class project next. But before I do, want to take a breath, open it up for any questions.
No questions as of yet, but still still processing everything. I'm sure I'll have a lot, in a little bit.
And that's what I was prepared for, right? Because I know this is a 6-page document, and half of it is links, right? So this is a lot to dump on you. Feel free to break this down into pieces. And that's why I assign this as a homework assignment, right? Because I'm not going to be like, all right, all of you start your capstones right now. That would be a lot. So the goal of this is to just start processing this, start chewing on this. And then hopefully by this time in a week and a half, so the end of week 6, hopefully you've got an idea that's pretty well formulated. And that's when the form will be due to submit your project ideas, so that I've got an idea in the back of my head when we meet for one-on-ones. Hey, where are you at? Where's your progress? Oh, great, we activated dark mode in the classroom. So that the goal there is just to get you started here. And this was one of my biggest pieces of how do I teach this? Where do I start? And that all manifested in this huge document. So that's why I'm handing this over to you and saying at some point before tomorrow, go through it, process it, chew on it, and we'll go from there.
Max, this is
Yes.
Chris. I know what I want to do. So I would like to start now. I know that I can't like literally start now, but in my mind, I'm like 2 weeks from now, I want to be rocking and rolling.
That is perfectly fine. I do not want to slow you down in any way, shape, or form. So over the next 2 days, we are going to go through all the steps that you should be going through as well. And the goal here is that you get all of these bullet points done by the second project week. So hopefully this is laying out your steps in terms of, all right, I need my HTML and my CSS pages. I need those pages linked together, right? I need to maybe set up some form fields for information. I can't store that information anywhere, but they may need to sign in. I should think through that. Understanding this is where we're going to start today: planning, requirement analysis, and design. So we're going to go all the way back to week 1, right? And we're going to talk through requirements of this app and asking the client, which is of course going to be yourself, what this app needs to do, and then breaking that down into engineering steps of let's wireframe that out so we make sure all the functionality is built in. And then, okay, let's create our project management tasks for that whole wireframe, and now we can dive into the code and the file creation and the linking and all of that stuff.
Okay. The information that Jason presented the other class, all of that is, did he submit something for, or I just go back and watch the video and collect how to get to some of the stuff on the city site?
If you just search for Open Data Syracuse, their website is data.syrgov.net. And this will be this will let you start exploring around in the data and figuring out how it's formatted and how to get started with it. With
Okay.
that said, just looking at our schedule, where is week 10 with Ryan Goss is going to be the first. That week is going to be all about pulling in data from a source like Open Data SYR. So if you're looking at all that data and you're like, hey, this is great, where do I go next from here? What you should be thinking about is what dummy data or placeholder data can I use while I'm doing my wireframes, and making sure you're understanding that, because week 10 is when you're going to have that knowledge unlocked of how you can programmatically access that data remotely and incorporate it into your app.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Very, very good question. Any other questions? And if you don't, that's okay. That's what tonight's homework assignment is. So I'm not asking you to parse all of this all instantaneously, giving you guys some time to parse it out. But any questions before we move on? Okie doke. So I am going to pull up. So let's touch on the software development lifecycle a little bit. We have done planning before, right? The planning was the car touchscreen, right? Understanding a client comes to me, I need to understand what all of their requirements are, right? What does this need to do? Then we get into the requirements analysis, which is now you're not in front of the client anymore, but you need to figure out, hey, what are we using? What steps do we need to do from here? How do we kind of take that information brain dump and break it down into actionable items that we can track throughout the project? From there, we go into design, right? Whether you want to do a full mock-up, whether you want to just do a wireframe, we have to figure out before we dive into this code head first, we need to figure out what it's going to look like before we actually start building that code. Then we're going to get into development, and we're going to be in development for pretty much the entire rest of the program here, right? All of those project weeks, we're going to keep coming back to this class project and keep on layering in things. So right when you're super glad that we're not spending any more time on it, we are going to have another couple weeks of learning, do a couple more homework projects, and then we're going to come back and we're going to reiterate all of those concepts, bake that functionality that we just learned how to make work into our class project. So hopefully that you can take the third transfer step and do it on your own, right? They say see one, do one, teach one is the model of true mastery, right? Of see someone else do it yourself, and then teach it to someone else. Well, we're kind of modifying that a little bit, right? We're seeing one in our class projects. We're doing one with a little bit of mentor guidance and seeing it applied in a real life project. And then you guys get to do one and do it on your own. So from there, we go into testing, and then we go into integration, right? So testing may be a phase that we try and build into that last project week of, hey, I want to send this link to my family and say, hey, look, I built this. Can you play around with it and let me know what you think? Or it may be going to fellow students and being like, here's my crazy app. What's frustrating about this? Would you use this? Is this actually a minimum viable product, or is it an MP, a minimum product that did not have that functionality in it that an actual end user would need? And then we go into deployment. And starting next week, you are going to learn all the joys of deployment. How do we actually get the code off my computer and live on the internet? So starting next week, Nathan Evans is going to come in. You get an entire week off from me, although I may be kicking around in the Zoom room, you never know. And he will be teaching you how to take your portfolio site and get that live. And he's going to go into DevOps and using Git. Super fun week coming up for that, but deployment is all part of DevOps, right? The whole point of deploying is getting your code off your computer up into the cloud and actually viewable and runnable by other people. And then maintenance, we won't be touching on this much throughout the whole software development lifecycle, but hopefully you're building something that coming out of the program, you identify, hey, here are some next steps, or hey, I want to restart this whole cycle, right? That's the whole point of the C and SDLC, is that you can go back in and continue iterating on it, making sure it's still working and all of that fun stuff. Any questions about that? We are going to today dive into the planning, the requirements analysis, and start the design of our feedback app. Okay. Today is going to be an interactive class because I'm taking off my teacher hat and putting back on my client hat. So there's this crazy client who woke up at 5 a.m. yesterday and had a great idea for a mobile responsive feedback app that would allow a user to solicit feedback. Anyone should be able to submit feedback either truly anonymously, so we don't get any email address from them, with their email address so the user can see who submitted it, or with a hidden email address, meaning the user who's getting that feedback can't see it, but when they reply, the email will go through to the person who initially submitted that feedback. The user should be able to see that feedback and only their feedback. And if an email or other of either type, either the email that gets submitted or the email that says, hey, I don't want the person to actually know who's submitting this feedback, but I would like them to still be able to reply to me. They should be able to respond to that message or that feedback and track the conversation going back and forth in the app. Email notifications should also be sent when incoming messages are received. Now, your guys' job is to build this app. What questions would you have for someone coming to you saying, hey, I would like this app built? Because we'll get into the planning steps next. But right now is your opportunity to ask questions about how the app should work or questions that make no sense to you on this so far.
How does the user solicit feedback? I mean, are there people listen? Like, how do the people giving feedback become aware that the user has something they want feedback on?
So the user should be able to provide a unique link that allows we need a name for because the user critics, that's a great one, that allows critics to submit feedback. So basically, very similar to Calendly, right? I send you my Calendly link, you go in and book it, and then I get an email at the end, hey, this person has booked a new appointment with you. Same thing for the feedback. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, I'm all ears to feedback. Here's my link to feedback.com/maxmatthews. And any of you, the critics, could go on to my link and submit feedback. And then I can go back to my feedback.com dashboard and see what has been submitted.
So is this like, you know how you go to different restaurants and you rate your experience and then they give you a code and you get something free? Is that what this is like?
It's similar to that. This is more of a, hey, let's say you work at a company and you've got some feedback for your boss of something that they could be doing better, but you don't want your name attached to it. But you want them to respond to you. You want to turn this into a conversation, but you may not want to expose your actual email address or your actual name. So this site almost works like a proxy, right? In that you can go into the site and leave your comment, and your boss could come in, the user of the site, and respond to you as a critic, and they would still never see your email address. The email address almost gets hidden if you choose to. You could also submit that critique and say, hey, here's my email. I want to talk about this. Here's the, what is going wrong. Or you could remain completely anonymous, at which point there is no way to respond to you or start a conversation, but at least you can submit the feedback.
Okay.
So we should be able to make a hidden email option. Like, I know that Google has something like that. When you're submitting certain things, they ask if you want to use your actual email address, or there's a hidden feature, and they provide like a hidden email that you can use. So we should be able to populate hidden emails for the consumer.
Yes. So I'm going to say critique should be able, critic should be, that's not how you spell critic. Critic. Sorry if that was bothering anyone. It was bothering me. Critics. Okay. Critics should be able to use a hidden email address in addition to their real email. Let me word that differently. In addition to exposing their real email or choosing to remain completely anonymous at the downfall of not being able to get a notification if a response is posted.
Do they have a particular color scheme in mind already? So like
Nope.
branding.
No color scheme in mind, no product name in mind.
Do we know if we're supposed to be marketing to like a specific group of people? Maybe marketing isn't the best word, but like, is it going to be
I have a
like
question.
service or like individual companies or?
Yeah, marketed towards individuals who probably already could benefit from feedback. Eventually could be marketed to teams at companies to encourage an open door policy in terms of improvement. Nicole, do you have a question?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, well, before you guys got that far, I kind of thought that maybe it could be like a chat box of some sort. I didn't know if it was a form or not, but like a chat box so where like a computer could talk and you can submit. Or like with Uber Eats, they have like the middleman, so they don't give out your phone number technically, and they have like an automated number and things, kind of like what Scotty was saying. But there's like a middleman, so your information isn't out there.
Yeah, so I'm going to say users should be able to respond to critic and still maintain the veil of privacy of the critic. And then I think that is a good thing to note of client is not opposed to chat box functionality. I'm going to touch on that. We're going to circle back to that.
Okay, sorry.
So will this be listed like on their website, or is it going to be like, will it be linked somewhere else?
It will probably be a link. So user will share a link to our feedback app that takes them directly to the user's specific feedback submission page. So basically, same thing of like when I go to my site and you click on calendar, it pops up my Calendly right built in. Same thing for the feedback, right? When they click on the feedback link, it will either pop up or will take them to our app that we're building and say, hey, I heard you've got some feedback for Max. Go ahead and type in your message here and then choose your submission type.
I like that.
Larry, question.
Now just input. Are there specific categories that they want feedback on?
I think that is something that we need to explore through user testing. So the client thinks that to start the only two pieces of information that need to be submitted are a message and the type of submission, meaning anonymous, we'll call it relay mode, or let's call that, yeah, we'll call it relay, or direct. If we want to change those down the road, we totally can, but anonymous being you don't put any email in, relay being they don't see your email, but will relay messages back and forth. And then direct meaning you're just going to provide your email address so they know who's submitting it. Doug, question.
Yeah, how does the user reach out to the critics? I mean, do you just go to the site, look for people's submissions and give me your 2 cents? Or do I solicit particular groups of people and say, I want feedback from, like, how do the critics and the user get into a conversation?
Yeah, so that's kind of part of this, right? So the critic is going to provide the link for the initial critique to come in. From there, the user will get an email notification that a new critique has arrived. User will be able to open app from that email notification and respond to that critic, who will also get an email notification when the response has been posted.
But even before that, like say I built a portfolio website, I want feedback on it. What do I do? Do I post a link to this service, and who's going to respond to it? Do I ask certain people, or?
Yeah, so we'll say
wants to.
Sharing the user's individual feedback link will be done outside of the platform. So basically, I'm going to send I'm going to send my mom a website, and I'm going to say, hey, I would love some feedback on this, right? And with that link to the website I want them to review, I'm also going to send them my feedback link. And so now when they click on that, they're not going to go to the generic feedback homepage. They're going to go to a page specifically for me, so that when any submission comes in, I'm going to be able to know, the app is going to know what user that is for. So I would share feedback.com/Max Matthews, and that's how we would drive users to the site.
Okay.
Both critics and users. Zach, question.
So the app isn't going to have the ability to post notifications on your phone. It's just going to be emails.
We will say mobile app would be a great next step. But to start, we're going to target web for the sake of ease of critic submitting info. So basically, I don't want to have someone try and give me feedback and then it says, oh, download this app in the App Store. I don't care about this enough to tell them what I really think about it, right? So to get started, we're gonna do everything web-based, but down the road, we could totally set up an app for the user so they would be able to access that information as well. So mobile app might be helpful for user, but and push notifications, but does not need to be MVP. And that is as a developer, you're thinking the right way, right? Because push notifications are great, and a lot of users love that over an email notification. The only downside now is you need to download the mobile app in order for those push notifications to work. And so it's totally not because our curriculum doesn't touch on mobile app development. It's totally because it's just not MVP for this idea. Other questions for the client on this app? Are we kind of starting to envision how it should work? What other questions would we have?
Is the feedback like forms, like, 1 to 10, or is it just conversational? Like I send you a paragraph about my opinion.
Yeah, I think I touched on in that to start, the only two pieces of information are a message and the type of submission. And then I'll add a sentence here. Down the road, we could support form types, form field types for some. Yeah, we can, for submitting other kinds of feedback points.
So basically, it's just a feedback form.
It's a feedback form with a database behind it to store all the information, notifications going out that the form has been submitted, and that anonymous feature, which that I actually thought I was going to build this as a Hack Upstate project, a hackathon project, and then we haven't had one in a while. So I have not been able to find anything with that layer of anonymity that the critic has, right? So it would be nice because, hey, soliciting feedback is great, but oftentimes as the user who's getting that feedback, I may have further questions. I may say, well, when did you get lost? When did you start feeling that way, right? But I can't do that unless there's some way to respond to them. But at the same time, a lot of people won't submit honest feedback to you unless they know there is a layer of anonymity behind it. So that's the secret sauce. And that's actually a term that gets used in the industry of when you're talking to a company or an app developer, and they say, well, what makes you different? What makes you unique? Oftentimes they will say, what is the secret sauce? And so the secret sauce for this app is that layer of that option to remain anonymous, but keep the communication open. Yeah. With that said, it's also a great full stack app, and that's the other reason and primary reason we're doing it, is because this is actually at the scale that you could pull off for a capstone project. Other questions? Okay, so now we start breaking this down. So your gut tell you anything, if you're thinking about a user, right? A user coming into this site for the first time, what is the first thing they probably need to do to set up to get going and using this app?
Have an email?
Register through your email, absolutely. Yep. So we're gonna just label this as user flow. And from here, we're gonna say the user should be able to land on app homepage, click on a register button, and what needs to be on that register page?
Name, details about them, like the name, their, I don't know. Email, phone number.
Phone number, I don't think we'll need because we won't do like text messages quite yet. Although that could be totally a next step. But I think we need their password. And then we also see a confirm password. And what's the slightly less obvious one that you need?
This is just a password for this site.
Correct.
Okay.
If they want to be anonymous or not.
No, because this isn't the critic. This is the person soliciting the feedback.
Okay.
So the user and the critic are going to be our two user types. And I think that that's a really good key differentiator, because oftentimes in apps, we have different user levels, right? We may have in the case of Caitlin's app, she may need to be able to go in and update the trash schedule. But for a regular end user, they wouldn't have that ability, right? So having different levels of user types or user roles built into your authentication is often quite a common thing, and also something to keep in the back of your head when you're working on the capstone of, okay, who's going to be using my site, and do we need different levels of access for them? What's the last thing we need on the register form?
Is it confirm
Submit.
email?
Submit button.
You got it.
Oh, submit.
Or I like to call it, I personally don't like generic buttons, so I try and say what the action of the button is, so create account, but it is totally a submit button. That's right. All right. Where do they go from there?
Not sure.
To the form, right?
Well, it's a good
Define-
question.
Define
profile
what it is
page?
that they want feedback on.
Is
Yes.
it the homepage or the
Categories.
A dashboard.
Yeah. So dashboard's a great, let's say the dashboard. What does the dashboard need to have on it? Doesn't actually need to have the form themselves, because they aren't submitting the
Navbar?
feedback.
And
Yeah, we
Messages.
can do a navbar with like a logout button, maybe.
yeah.
Messages that show, what do the messages need to show?
Feedback response.
Date.
The date, the message itself, and then maybe the critic
Right.
info, right? And this may be their email, but it might be a something that just says anonymous. So maybe critic type.
Would they want like a outbox so they can track what their responses was?
Yeah. So when I see the incoming messages and I'm sitting on my dashboard as the user, what action item do I want to take on those messages?
Reply.
Reply. Yep. Anything else that needs to go into the messages inbox?
If they're read or unread.
Sure.
A draft.
I think draft is going to get a little out of the scope of MVP, but totally something that would be a good feature to add at some point.
Okay.
Anything else for the messages?
Maybe a thread count, like a reply for how many back and forths that
Sure.
you've had with that messenger.
Sure. Anything else?
yeah, date, so date includes time. So that's no date and time.
Yep.
Okay.
So what about the other person? Oh, I'm
Great
not sure.
question. What else needs to go on our dashboard outside of messages?
Who you were sending them or
The feedback forms.
The link to my personal feedback form. Right? I need to be able to share that with someone. I need to be able to
Right.
say, hey, here's my Calendly link, right? Here's my feedback link.
How about an invite button to actually reach out right from the app?
What would the invite button need?
I have a quick question. Is the feedback gonna be just based on you seeing them, or is it gonna be like publicly too, so other people could just you?
I think to start, we'll make it just you. I think that that's a great thing, and let's note that in the questions of initially only the user will be able to see their feedback submissions, but eventually optionally turning on a public view option could be additional functionality. Doug, back to you. If we add an invite button, what does that do? What other information do we need?
I mean, I guess you would contact someone via email or phone
Yeah.
number, text them.
Additional form to collect email of invitee, who would be your critic, right? And send button. And yes, you could down the road add in SMS or other types to send as well. Okay. Anything else that needs to be on the user's dashboard?
I thought maybe like a little profile icon, no?
Yeah, I think we could add that in. Maybe on the Navbar, in addition to log out, we could do profile, and that would take you to change password, edit display name, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good thought. Anything else?
How about the topics that you've solicited critiques on?
I think that goes back to the only two pieces that we're going to collect, which are the message and the type of the feedback. I think we'll add creating multiple feedback form links to track the topic of the critique. Could be post MVP, right? So that's a good idea, right? When you get on my Calendly, you get options for 12 minutes, 25 minutes, or 55 minutes. We may want to set up multiple feedback links. So down the road, you could say, hey, I'm soliciting feedback on my teaching, which is totally going to be different than soliciting feedback on my code quality or my communication skills, right? And so down the road, we could totally set it up so it would be /MaxMatthews/code. And then any submissions coming in there may go into a different inbox or a different area. So I think that's a good idea. Who knows? Maybe we'll get this app created so quickly, we'll get to post MVP features. Anything else for the feedback form? Or I'm sorry, for the dashboard.
No.
Okay.
Is
So are
this
we
also it's not gonna be real time? Like, is there a real time feature in there?
No, only because the email notification would be more real time. So we'll expect that a user would like click on the email link and that would like refresh the page.
Okay.
All right, so are we done?
For now, yeah.
Not quite. We're done
No.
with this user flow. We've identified everything that needs to go on this screen, but there is more than one user flow here. We need to take a step back and say, hey, this is the user flow for the end user. What about the user flow for the critic? Oh, okay. So user flow, critic. What does that look like?
Like you said, we should probably streamline it as much as possible so that people don't like lose interest. So maybe just a login or register screen.
I don't even think you do a login. First of all, how does the user get to the site?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
With a link.
Yep. Critic opens link shared by user on third-party platform. Right. So whether that's the personal, oh, I've gone purple again. A good thing break is about to start. The sun comes through the blinds at just the right spot and it makes the color balance go nuts on my webcam.
Oh, that is awesome.
No, I'm just purple now. Sorry, I will fix it the sun will, in 15 minutes, will be at the perfect spot, and my camera will be fixed. Anyway, okay, so they open the link. What's that link page look like?
So the critic is gonna be the
person providing the feedback.
data, anonymous.
So yeah, what's the, oh, see, sunset just 1 more minute and I'm back to normal. Out of Barney mode, apparently. What does, they click on the link, right? What does that page look like when they land on it?
I think like what Wayne was saying, have the choice of anonymous or direct.
Choose feedback type, and we chose direct, anonymous, or relay. Now on that, how do they know what direct, anonymous, and relay is?
There was some instructions.
Yep.
The description.
Are options to choose which one you'd like to be referred as, or
All right, now our user flow splits. What comes next?
Need an input area, text area.
Yeah, so input area to collect email along with maybe the type they chose, unless they choose to be completely anonymous. All right, and then what?
In terms of the feedback, is it gonna be more of an option based or something that they're just gonna type in and then submit?
Yeah, so I think we identified that further up here of the only 2 pieces that we're really collecting are going to be the message, and then down the road we can add in like form types and stuff like that. So input area to collect feedback message.
All right, and a submit button.
Submit button. And then what's the next part of the user flow that might not be submit button and confirmation message? What's the next part of the user flow that might not be obvious but needs to happen? This isn't a UI question, this is a UX question.
A way to close the form?
That we can just assume that they can close the tab
Yeah,
or the
they can
browser
just
window.
close the tab
There's
or browser window.
another part though that we need.
So after submitting confirmation,
I would something to let them know they got a message back.
Not just a message back, we need to fire off the email to the user who is getting the feedback from the critic that they've got a new piece of information in. So we say send notification email to user that there is a new critique.
And then there'll be something like something that'll highlight within their side that they will see that they got something back. Okay.
And then we can say if user replies, notification email is sent to critic. But now we run into another problem. What happens when the critic gets that email?
and they're anonymous, the anonymous ones.
So how do we solve for that?
The email needs a link back to the messaging window or interface.
But they get back to that, and this is on the end user side. This isn't on the critic side, because we've identified the first thing they need to do here is register. But we've already identified a requirement that we don't want to make critics register for the platform because now they're not anonymous. But we have identified that one of the key secret sauce things of this app is that they can reply back and forth with each other. So now we're here and we say, if user replies, notification email is sent to critic with a link to a page only the critic
Can see.
has access to.
Makes sense.
How-
Perfect.
So behind the scenes, how are we maintaining their anonymity? Like, do they just have like a number that links to their email, like user 00570?
I
Yeah.
feel like
Basically, the email is just never exposed to the end user. So we have to store that in the database, but they can never see it.
Okay.
and that's based on their first initial choice, like whether they're gonna be anonymous or
Correct.
end user. Okay.
Yes. So I'm going to just sum this up, and then Zach, I will come to you next for your question. I'm going to
One more
say, if the critic clicks on the link and sends in feedback, that page, critic message page needs to allow critic to see all current responses and send a new message. Okay, Zach, you still have a question?
The section where we choose the feedback type, do we want it to be like an interactive interface where it's like the form itself they fill out? Like we'll have like 3 tabs, and when you click on one, like the form itself changes.
We are going to answer that after break. Any other questions?
Should the critic page, when you first, like at the top, should there be the topic that they're being asked to critique?
I think because they're going to be able to see all the messages back and forth, that they won't need like a summary or a topic, but we could always down the road not make it just have a message field, but also have like a subject, because it is possible that you've got multiple points of feedback for the person and may want to submit the form a couple times and have different threads going on, right? But I think that might be a little out of MVP.
So I have a quick question. Right now, at this point in the web development space, who are we? Like, who are we right now? Like, what is our job title right now?
Your job title right now is business operations, because you are in phase 1. Well, I'm sorry, we already did phase 1. Phase 1 was the planning, right? Phase 1 was this question back and forth of just asking the question clients and getting answers. Now phase 1 is done. The client doesn't go away, the product owner doesn't go away, but they are now saying, you've got everything you need, go from here. Now we're in requirements analysis and engineering breakdown. So this is when the engineers start to get involved and start going to their design team and saying, hey, what does this app really need to do? What are we going to build the app in? All of that stuff. That is more, engineers can be involved in that process, but that tends to be where the whole team comes to the table for the first time and starts picking apart what the client actually wants. After break, we are going to head into design. And now Christy gets involved from yesterday, right? Now Christy's looking at this, understands the user flow thanks to the detailed requirements analysis, and is able to start designing out some wireframes in terms of what that looks like. That is a UI designer's job, or Christy has a whole list of job titles and adjacent job titles to that, but that is basically a user experience designer, or a user interface designer, or front-end dev sometimes, saying, okay, we need to plan out what this is going to look like. Then it gets to development, and that's when a full stack developer would get involved, or multiple developers would get involved, a front-end developer and a back-end developer, and maybe even a database engineer, right? So the front-end developer is just doing the HTML, the CSS, and possibly the React. The back-end developer is going to come in and say, you need an API to make all of this work. You need emails to fire off when something gets submitted. you need a place to submit it to, you need all of that done. The database engineer is going to say, I don't care about any of that. All I care about is where the data is getting stored and the structure that it is getting stored in. And so that's the role of the database engineer, is to work with the backend developer. The backend developer works with the front end developer. All three of those come together. And if that all happens to be one person, that is now a full stack developer. Now, it is entirely possible that after this, you're going to say, I want to freelance. I love doing every step of this process. I can pull this off. I can work with the client and I can do every step here. At which point you not only are a full stack developer, you are also a business owner.
Is it owner?
Business owner, yes, because at that point you're an entrepreneur, right? Because normally every step of this process is not done by the same person even in a small or medium-sized company, but it is entirely possible to do every step of this process on your own. And at that point, you're just freelancing with someone. You're going to someone and you're saying, hey, you've got an idea. I can help make that idea. That idea requires all of these steps to pull off, but because I can do all of them, lay it on me. Let's start with the planning, and we're going to chug all the way through until that app is deployed and in maintenance mode.
Oh.
And it's totally possible to do that. And we do have someone who does freelance work, and hopefully we can get them in as a guest speaker at some point for this cohort.
Okay.
3 minutes until break. Do we have any questions on user flow or anything so far? I know this should be a review. Hopefully you're not having like traumatic flashbacks to the car app, because we are about to go back into diagrams.net, which I know some of you loved and a lot of you hated, but it's a love to hate it kind of tool. If you would like to use a different tool for your capstone, I encourage you to. That's completely okay. But is this hopefully triggering some things of thinking about, once I got my app idea together, maybe I can do some planning. Maybe I can ask myself some questions as the client as to how this should work. Because one of the biggest mistakes I see junior developers doing is diving headfirst into the code, right? They come into a project and they go, I know all the answers to this because I'm the client. So I'm just going to pull up my HTML and I'm going to start going. Right. And I know because we didn't touch on the software development lifecycle in cohort 1, Karen went through, started working on her app, and she just couldn't figure out how this app was going to work. And she had 14 different screens and was like, I feel like I'm just drowning here. And so we took a step back and we said, what are all the things the app needs to do? And she said, okay, well, you need to be able to create an account. We said, freeze. If you need to create an account, you also need the ability to change your password on the account. How do you change your password? And she looked at all of her screens and said, I need another screen. So she added another screen. And then we said, well, how do you get to that screen? Oh, and then she had the light bulb moment of, I need a Navbar. The Navbar is going to tie all of these screens together. And while that may seem obvious in the design phase, when you've got that HTML cursor blinking back at you in VS Code, that may not be an obvious answer. And so that's the whole point of spending so much time on this, even though it is non-technical. Oftentimes as a developer, you're going to be handed something and you're going to need to push back on the business team and say, I need to understand this more. And so that's why we're recapping all of these steps, even though we already taught this, because hopefully this class project is exactly the second example you need, so that when you dive into your project, you can then go ahead in and complete these steps. Now, I will say, after years and years of doing this, there are times that I start a project and I do skip some of these steps. So if you have in your mind exactly what you want your app to look like, pull out a piece of paper and wireframe it and start there. It is okay to skip some of these steps, but I would highly encourage you not to do that unless you are so ready to start on your wireframe that you're able to jump right into it. So all of that said, it is 7 o'clock. I will stick around for any questions. Otherwise, be back at 7:20. Questions going once? Going twice?
I have a question unrelated to this project.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So I was looking at the Sirgov.net, the data. It's not clear to me like how to really get like, is there a list of like, these are our data sets. Here's where you go to see them. Here's how you get to the table. Here's how you get to the API.
I think that's their data topics area. So it's been a minute since I've been on this site, but if we wanted to see like the average cost of housing per neighborhood in Syracuse, right? Like I don't know why I picked that. I don't know if we can even get to that level of data, but I would go under housing, and then I would go look at whatever these categories are, and I would think that housing would be the top one, right? So I'm going to go to that data.
Okay, so the data topics is like the gateway to,
Yes.
okay.
And then from here, I would be able to say like maybe view full details. And now I've got all 121 attributes with every parcel in Syracuse. So now I could be able to come in here and say, well, I wanted to look at the assessed value, the average assessed value. So I would come down and I would try and find deed paid, style, full baths, lot, mailing address, year built, assessed VA, and that's the number. And so now I can look at this and go, all right, well, I've got access to the assessed value. Maybe I'm interested in the assessed value versus the number of acres it is, right? So now I could come back up and find the acreage information, which I know I passed in here, and start designing an interface around that, right? Of, well, maybe I only care about that if they're in the Eastwood neighborhood. So let's have a drop down select for that, right? So sometimes it's best to start with your data and work your way back out to the user interface. And sometimes it's good to do that in reverse, right? To say, hey, here's what I would like to get out of it. Let me make those assumptions and then go into the data and confirm that I have access to those pieces, those attributes of information.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of just sort of browsing to try to spark ideas.
Yep, I think everything's broken down into these top 4 ideas, these top 4 topics. And then you can see like they even have like the neighborhoods already broken out. So now you can start saying, oh, well, I can overlay this neighborhood data with the tax data map. And then I could start cross-referencing that data to find like an average value of a home. So this is very data focused. Obviously, it's an open data portal, and it's more about browsing. But based off of this data, that may spark some inspiration for you of like, oh, overlaying a couple of these data sets may actually produce something that's more app-like and less of data exploration, right? And so I think that was Caitlin's main project was, hey, all of the trash day data is in here, but when I want to find my trash day, I don't want to have to browse through thousands of rows to find my parcel number to know what day my trash day is on. So Caitlin built an interface where you could enter your address, it would validate the address to know that it was in Syracuse, and then would automatically look up the lot number, the parcel number, or whatever it was, get the trash day from a second API call, and then display to the end user, your trash day is Thursday. So even though it was doing a lot of work behind the scenes for the address validation and the mapping of the property ID and then the property ID to the trash day to the end user, all they saw was enter address, your trash day is Tuesday.
Another thing with the data too, if you do decide to use city data, I don't know how much better it is now, but it was very inconsistent. So like a lot of times you'd put in like a street address and the street name, like, I don't know, it would have like the whole word street or just ST, or like the street name could have been like slightly misspelled, or like the number wasn't exactly what you thought it was, especially for like 2-family houses. So I had to write a lot of code to parse that and kind of like sift through all the errors in the data as well, to make it more user friendly. So just something to think about there also. And if you're purely curious about like what types of data sets they have, another way to get a list of like just all the data sets, if you just go to like the home page of that and you click like the search in the middle, it brings up like a little like it says like explore, and underneath explore, yeah, thanks Max, it just says data. And then you can filter in the top, like sort of like middle right where it says relevance, you can filter by title, and they'll alphabetically sort through every single data set that they have. I used, I think, like 3 different data sets. Some of it was way more complicated because I also did like yard waste pickup by quadrant. And I had to get like geo coordinates for an address and then place them inside a quadrant, which was basically just like a polygon on a map. And that was like really complicated, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can do because there are so many data points within all of those data sets. So it's definitely worth exploring. It was not easy, but it was definitely fun and pretty rewarding actually. So if you do have questions, I can try to rack my brain about how I actually did things. I can't guarantee that I remember everything I did. But yeah.
Yeah, if I start using Open Data Syracuse and I run into questions, I'm coming for you.
Okay.
The good news is
question.
Caitlin's code is probably up on GitHub. So
It's
if you,
broken though, but you can look at the code, but the app is not running.
yes.
I have a question.
Yep.
But I just have something to say. I currently work right now for SeeClickFix, and that's another like app that we use to track like trash pickup, just requests from like I'm glad you do. I never met anyone who does, but yeah, so it's basically like, I don't really know, but like citizens feedback on like, so what happens for them, they give us feedback and we try to use that data. So I feel like that one would be a good one because I just recently did something like that for them, and it was a little bit more accurate.
Yeah, that's something, there's a lot of data on there, I heard. That's pretty cool.
Caitlin, I want to do something with the bike trails. So
okay, that's a new one, I think. So I'd be happy to explore that with you.
Yeah, so I want to see, I'm not really sure how I want to nail it down, but I'm thinking of, Jason made a suggestion about, because they have they have 4 categories. So like maybe trying to map out how someone can get from like maybe the north side to the valley, or that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Something along those lines. So
like safely on a bike route.
yeah, like and definitely I feel like this would be exciting for the blog because I could actually get on my bike and ride and take pictures. So I don't know, that's just gonna be interesting. Yeah, because I ride my bike, but I know for a fact that some of these trails, like I see these bike lanes on Salina Street, I'm like, there's no way I would ride on this bike. I would never, like I'm saying, because I know I've seen people driving on the bike lane. I could just see me in the hospital with my laptop trying to finish class. Like, no.
So I will say, don't underestimate Caitlin's warning of open data is great. Cleaning the data and so it's usable information, I think is going to be the challenge. But you may find that even though your user interface is somewhat simplistic in terms of enter starting address and ending address, and we'll give you a like a rating on how great that bike route is going to be, or a percentage of how much of it is going to be in bike lanes, or whatever it is. That sounds like a super basic user interface, because it is. That could be your entire capstone for working with the data, figuring out how to clean it up, figuring out, what you're going to cross-reference there, figuring out, oh, maybe I want to factor in the number of lanes that road has in addition to whether it's a bike lane or not, right? Figuring out, oh, I've got to layer in directions on top of the route data, right? So I just want to say that just a warning that sometimes the simplest apps are the most helpful ones and also the hardest ones to pull off. So just planning that in the back of your head. Don't feel like that is too easy of an app or too easy of a capstone, because I do think you'll have challenges along the way that are all great challenges that will go a long way. But just warning you on that.
I definitely had a lot to talk about, that's for sure.
When Creek Walk opened up, I wanted to ride my bike on the Creek Walk, and so there was literally this one little block where it connected, but by the naked eye you just couldn't see it. So my friend actually got in her car, went on Facebook, called me on video chat, and showed me how to connect. And when you see it, it's the most dangerous thing ever. And I've done it, but it's like I don't know if it will be helpful, but it would be helpful to people to let them know, like, maybe some connections, or when you look at an app. So
well,
I've had experience in this, so like just trying to ride my bike. So that's why I said it would be helpful, because I wish I had an app.
The other thing that I can that we can get into is maybe it's Christie's Bike Routes app, right? Christie's Q's Bike Routes, and it isn't using any of the open data, but it's just a place for you to be able to post a Google map that has the route on it, has a little description area, and then has maybe a little user interface for you so that you can click add new route and input all the information you need and hit save. And then anyone who goes to your website sees the list of routes, can click on one and get the details on it.
Bingo.
So that may be, I mean, open data is great. I don't want to discourage you from using it, but that's essentially what we had for last cohort. Was a student said, I want an interface for posting concerts in different areas, right? Or different events. And so she just built a little management system for herself where she could input all the form fields and hit save. And then when any user went on the site, they were able to see what they were posting. So that's a very common capstone idea and a great one. I have nothing against it.
So now you just redirected me. Thank you. Now we can go. Now I'm going on break. Thank you. That's perfect. I would prefer something like that, because I was looking at that map and I'm like, oh my God. So yeah.
It is not an unsurmountable challenge. It is totally possible to use that data. But lots of ways you can take your capstone, and oftentimes you get halfway down a path and you go, what was I thinking using mapping data? I don't want to do that. I just want to put a route on Google Maps, right? And that's also completely fine.
And so then I would just, my capstone would be created around me mapping different routes. That's perfect. Thank you. This is perfect. Yes, I feel good. I'm going to heat up my tea. Let me do my clap.
Any last minute questions before I run on break for a couple? Cool. All right, I'll be back. Before I dive into that, wanted to take a quick note. Christy asked a really good question over the break that I wanted to make sure everyone heard the answer to. She was, yes, that Christy, not yesterday's Christy. She said, the open data is great. I've got an idea. I want to do something with biking. I can go into the data and I can find that, but there's a lot of data in there. And I said, well, one thing that a lot of our students have done is built a little management interface, right? So instead of overlapping all of this data from the city, maybe Christy makes a little app where she can sign in and post some information about a bike route and a description of it and the length of it, and some notes, and maybe end users can leave comments on there, right? And say, hey, I did this ride. This was great. And Christy was like, that's what I want. I don't want to be messing around with map data. that's the app I want to make. So keep that in the back of your head. I'm not saying everyone needs to make an app like that, but we have had a lot of students create their own little content management systems, something that allows them to edit or delete or update information, whether it's a bike route or a concert or whatever it is. And then end users can go in and interact with that and maybe leave comments on it and go from there. So it is very common to see our students create their own kind of mini content management system. Christy, do you have a question?
You said bike description and then you use a third word, but I didn't write it down fast enough.
I'm not going to tell you. That is up to you to figure out what you would like to show in your app. Once you get into it, it's going to be very easy to have 3 form fields or 50 form fields. So whatever you would like your personal app to have is completely fine with me.
Okay.
Any other questions about planning or the capstone? Does anyone have ideas that they want to kind of throw out? If you want to wait, you can put them in the homework assignment. And again, your capstone ideas are not due until the end of week 6, and we are in week 5 right now. So the only thing due tomorrow is review the giant capstone doc, come up with any questions, just shoot me a little message of how you're feeling about your capstone and if you have any questions before you dive into it. And then the submission form, I did link there, but you don't need to fill that out until the end of week 6.
I have a different question.
Go ahead.
So on Free Code Camp, if are we at a place where we are capable of doing some of those certificate things? Like if we've done all of, like, are we comfortably at a place to do that?
Great question. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
So you are at a place, this entire certificate should now be in reach for you. This is all HTML and CSS. This is where we are headed for week 7, 8, and 9, and maybe also 10. Once you get through week 10-ish, you would be ready to complete this one. And by this weekend, I will have homework posted for what will be due at the start of week 7. So one of the pieces of feedback was, hey, if you're going to give us a big chunk of free code camp and we can use that to prep coming into class, can we get that early? And I thought that was a great idea. So there will be homework assignments for week 7 coming out of this JavaScript algorithms and data structures that I want to get posted this weekend. So you have an entire week in advance to prep for it and to get through it. And then this front-end development library certification, this is all of React. So this is React is week 12, 13, and 14. So that certificate will be in reach at the end of React. We don't do data visualization really as part of our curriculum. We will get into back-end development and API certification. I don't know if I'm going to use things from this module as homework, but this certification would be in reach at the end of the program. And then there's not a ton of other things we do other than maybe this relational database and the responsive web design. Those would be 2 other ones. I encourage you to do all of them, but the ones that we will touch on are responsive web, JavaScript algorithms, front-end development libraries, and this back-end development and APIs. But this is the first one that you have unlocked the first level of careers in code and can now progress into Free Code Camp if you want to complete this certification. Great question. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so goals for the rest of the evening. We are going to revisit diagrams.net, and we are only going to create this user flow for the end user. I will tomorrow go through and create the user flow for the critic and any screens related to that. So we have that to reference, but during tonight's class, I am only going to create the wireframes live for the end user, that kind of dashboard view page, so that we have hopefully a little time at the end to just get our first file created, right? To get a starting point so that when we get into tomorrow, we're not doing Bootstrap and the basic index.html. The goal is to get that out of the way tonight. I do not expect you to go through diagrams.net with me and create these wireframes as we go. There is no homework assignment for that. But I would encourage you, if you have another tool you want to check out for wireframing or mockups, to pull that tool up and try and accomplish the same things that I am going through. But like I said, no homework assignment. If you want to just go along for the ride, that is completely fine. So I'm going to pop open diagrams.net and I'm going to hit the start button. Whoa, remember this, baby? We are not going to be working on that. So I'm going to go to the menu up here and go to File and New. And I'm going to call this feedback user dashboard. And I'm going to hit create. And I'm going to get my blank slate. I will say there will be one other homework assignment. It won't be due until Sunday, but it will be a name suggestion competition where you can submit the name of whatever we want to call this feedback app that we're developing. And I'm also going to show you tomorrow how to check to see if a domain name is available. So that will be a homework assignment that we'll go over tomorrow that won't be due until Sunday. But it's just going to be, coming up with the name and then also checking to see if the domain name is available or one similar to it. And then next time we revisit this, we'll actually go in, we'll buy the domain, and we'll go through all of the steps that Nathan is going to start teaching you next week in terms of deploying and DNS and getting all of that linked. So that is coming up. Right now, I'm going to start with a rectangle because that's where we always start. I have no idea how zoomed in I am. That looks like normal. I'm going to drag that out. And 960 is actually a good size of a box usually. So if I click on that and go to the Arrange tab, I'm going to set my width to 960. That's normally a good starting point. And then my height, let's say, is going to be 600. And that's going to be my screen as I start. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my requirements here. Let me try and fit everything in one screen. Okay, we have to do the app homepage. So I would start a list personally of all the screens that we're going to need, right? So we're going to say screens, and we're going to bullet that and say app homepage. We need the register screen. We need the user dashboard. We need the reply screen. We need the initial critic type screen. We need the critic message screen. We need a critic message submit confirmation, submit success. And we need the critic reply to messages screen. Anyone not know what those are? Any surprises there? We also probably need a login screen. And I think that's all. Any questions on that? We see how we get that from everything we generated down here kind of as a stepping stone.
I have a question.
Yep.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, is this just gonna be, how come there's so many screens? Like, I understand, like, but like, okay, I got it. Never mind.
Yep, that is the exact right answer. We need to plan out every time a user clicks on something, even if it's not an entirely separate page they go to, that's another thing that we need to plan for, right? So we want to have everything wireframed out so that when we get into the development, we know exactly, okay, when they click the login button, where does that take them? That's going to be a separate screen. Good. Wayne, are you talking to us?
Is there gonna be like a forget password within the login registry section?
Yeah, that's a good. I'll add that note there. Anything else? This is actually a surprisingly complex feature to build, but one that's actually really fun to teach at a boot camp, because everyone, if you are going into a job as a full stack developer, at some point you will need to deal with forgot password. So that's a fun one to actually teach, but we won't be there until I think the 4th project week.
I have another question. You know anything about DigitalOcean and what is it?
Yeah, DigitalOcean is a hosting platform. So you can vaguely think of them as
GoDaddy?
GoDaddy, yes. Yeah.
Oh.
So they provide web hosting. They're a little bit closer to developers though. So they're less about hosting a basic website or WordPress and more about hosting a full stack app. We're actually going to be using Heroku next. Well, I don't know if we use Heroku next week. We use Heroku in one of the 2 DevOps weeks, and they are a direct competitor to DigitalOcean. But Nathan just sent me his outline for next week. And one of the things that we touched on is like the different kinds of web hosting and the companies that provide it. So you'll be getting more detail on that next week.
Okay.
Yes, Christy.
I got better with this. Okay, so I'm following along, not completely, but I just want to make sure I'm at my spot in that in diagrams.net. So I got to 960 and I got to 600, but for position, how do I get to, oh, that's negative. So how do I get to negative 1265?
That you don't need to adjust. Kind of just scroll around on the canvas until you find your square, and that's fine to reference off of that.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought I had, because it won't let you type it in.
Interesting. Yeah, you can just scroll to wherever your rectangle is on the document. Mine, I don't even know where mine is, but the square is all you need at the right size.
Okay, so position doesn't really matter.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay. So I don't want to do that yet. Okay, so what I am going to do is, first things first, I'm going to go through, and we already said we're going to do wireframe separately for all the other pages, right? What the wireframe we want to focus on is this user dashboard. And dashboards are probably the most common screen to create in a web app. So on the dashboard, we said we need a nav bar, we need the messages, and we need the link for the personal feedback form. So right off the bat, I'm going to be designing with development in mind. And what that means to me is having the grid system in place. So I'm going to go to 960.js. I'm going to hit the big old download button. I'm going to open the zip. And I'm going to go in, and I happen to know from experience now that under the templates, there is one in Fireworks, and there's my 12 column.png. So I'm just going to take that file and drag and drop it into into diagrams.net. And I'm going to position that so my grid system is lining up with my page itself. And then I'm going to click on this, right click, and bring it to the front and go into style and take off my fill. And now all of a sudden I can see my grid system in place and design off of that.
Max, is there any reason why you chose 960, 600 over like 19, 20, 1280 or something like that?
There isn't. I think this is 960. I'm pretty sure is the medium screen size or right around the medium screen size in Bootstrap. A lot of people will only do 1 or 2 wireframes, one for desktop and one for mobile, and then they'll do multiple mock-ups for those different devices. But I don't really have 960 is just a number that was stuck in my head. I do know a lot of designers that will start at 1200. I know some designers will do mobile first design. So they'll design what it will look like on their phone and then design what it will look like on a desktop. Really doesn't matter too much.
Thank you.
Nicole, question? Oh, you're muted.
Can you duplicate the page with the grid already on it? Or would you have to put the grid in each time? Because I had trouble with that last time.
Yeah, if you come down here and like right click on this and hit duplicate, and then you name that as like grid starter. Now, whenever you duplicate it from down here, it will have that grid starter on it.
Okay, thank you.
Can we go back really quick to the steps for 960?
Yep. 960.gs.com. I'm sorry, 960.gs. Hit the big old download button.
Okay.
Then down here, open the zip file in your downloads folder, or just click on it in the bottom downloads bar.
We should already have it.
We already have
We
it.
should already have it in our computers from last time. So just go to your Finder, Christy, and then go to the grid in your downloads and go
Yeah.
to file.
It will be called 960-grid-system in your downloads folder.
I dragged it from Finder.
All right. Okay? So am I looking at master
you doing it,
or
Freddie?
or just master?
Doesn't matter. They're probably duplicates. So what you want to do is you want to get into templates and then go down to fireworks.
Wait, where am I dragging this? I'm confused.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I'm looking at downloads. Okay, I got you. I messed up. I got it. So I'm going into the I was looking at the. Oh, here it is right here. Okay, I got you.
So templates, fireworks, go down to the 12col.png and then just drag and drop that into diagrams.net.
That's what I was. Okay, templates, fireworks. Okay, thank you.
So I am going to, if I do a search for Navbar, I get this nice component that has a lot of stuff in it that I want, but I don't know if this is going to be too much for me. So I'm going to try and drag that out and see how editable this is. Ooh, drag it out over here. Okay, now up here, I can double click in. And so again, I just did a search for Navbar. And this first one over here is what I dragged out over for what I want. So in my Navbar, I'm going to call this feedback. I'm going to delete some of these. Oh, nope. Search. I don't need. Search button. I don't need. And then I'm going to scroll over here. My home link. I'm hoping I can get just that and move that over. I'm going to take out my link, my second link, and then my drop down. I'm going to move this over to the right, put it at the end. And I'm going to say this might be a little person icon. So I'm going to use my emojis. Or pick Santa just for fun. Well, that will be a profile icon. And then sometimes it's helpful in our wireframes to just leave a little note. So we could say clicking on this drop down will show settings and a log out button. So I'm just going to size that. Say profile in parentheses there, and that's a good starting point. So I would actually go back to my notes and say over here are screens. We also need a profile or settings screen for user. Okay, got our Navbar started. Move that just over a smidge so we can still see our arrows. Okay, From here, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to look at my requirements. And when you said for the dash bar, we need a nav bar with a logout and a profile. Okay, well, we've got our nav bar, we've got our home link up at the top. We may need more links down the road. That's okay. And then over here, we've got our little drop down, and then we've got a note saying that drop down should give you a profile and logout. Now, if you are looking at this and you say, well, why don't you just put a profile link and a logout button up there? That's also completely fine. Whatever you decide to do, every wireframe is going to look a little different. Okay, so we've got our messages and we've got our link to our personal feedback. Now, to me, I'm kind of thinking of over on the left, we would have a sidebar. So you could always grab that link and send it to someone. And then the main section of the page is going to be all of my messages, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just back out here and I'm just going to grab a rectangle, and it's a wireframe, right? It doesn't need to be perfect. So I'm going to drag this out and I'm going to say personal feedback link. And I'm going to drag that out and adjust my text so it's up at the top of it. And then I'm going to go grab 2 buttons. And one of the buttons is going to be just get a regular button without the check. No, okay, I'll just delete the check. One of these buttons is going to say copy. And that would, clicking on that will copy it to the clipboard. And then my other one is going to say Command C, Command V, get those lined up. My other one is going to say email. And then from there, I'm going to adjust, right? So I don't want to leave it between columns. I want to know how wide that's going to be right off from the starting point. So I'm going to grab my box. I'm going to drag it over. I'm going to make sure that it's full width. And that's a good starting point for me. So now I come back in. I say, all right, I've got the link to the personal feedback form taken care of. Now I can use the rest of this screen space over here to get my table with all of my messages showing in it, right? So I'm going to come here. I'm going to draw my box. I'm going to say this is going to take up the whole rest of the screen. And we need date, time, the message, the critic type, a reply button, whether it's read or unread, and a thread count. So I'm going to start with the table header. And I don't know, will it let me do... table. Let's see how well this plays. Nice. I'm going to try and drag out this table. And in here, we need to figure out what our columns are going to be. So I'm going to click into the table. I'm going to go to style or arrange. There's a way to add columns, and I know I forgot how to do this in cohort 2. I made that same mistake. Caitlin, do you happen to remember how you get to the table tools that let you add columns?
Arrange layout, maybe.
There's some weird place that they...
Is it in arrange? Wait.
Oh, so okay, up here at the top, there's this grid. And if you click on the second icon, it's going to add another column for you. So let's figure out, we've got date, time. We have...
Can you show where that was again?
Yep.
We got a couple of people that just didn't catch it.
Up at the top, there's this like grid icon. And if you click on that, okay, that's going to show me a different thing.
You have to have it clicked on like the whole table, maybe.
Yeah. So if you click on like the cell that you want to add, like the right side of it, and then you click on this little drop down, it's going to give you this insert column right.
Okay.
And so I think we want date, time. I think we can do our message. and a type, and then a reply button. And then in here, we will be able to do our more information about it, right? So I think this becomes our message info column. And then we've got the message, we've got the type, and then we've got the reply button. So I'm going to just shrink this down, and I'm going to add another button. I'm just going to copy this and paste it over and make this say reply. And we probably want actually another one for mark as read. So maybe we go.
What does his button say?
Reply and mark as read are the two buttons.
Oh no, I'm slow. I'm behind. I'm still on the other two buttons.
Oh, those are copy, like copy the link and email.
Thank you.
No problem.
You need a mouse.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I'm on a trackpad right now, and I don't know why I have not reached for my mouse yet. I totally feel you on that. Okay. Stay. Okay. We're going to get through it. We're almost there, and then we'll do project setup. So from here, our message info, we need to do the time. So let's just say 7:50 p.m. and we'll also have the date on that. So we'll say 4/27/21 at 7:50 p.m. We need a little read or unread. So let's see if there's like a little dot we can use. So that will mean that it is unread. And we said thread count. So we'll say 15 responses. And we probably should adjust here. So like our reply column probably shouldn't be that wide. So we'll shrink that down. Our type column shouldn't be that wide. So we'll shrink that down as well. And the type will just say anonymous. And another one will be like relay. So we know we can reply to it. And then we'll need one more at the bottom. And this one will say regular or named. But
Our
we need
user?
to be, what's that?
Our user, because they're going to be registered and anonymous, right?
It's going to be, what did we decide on? Direct, anonymous, or relay. So we'll call that one direct. And then the reply button won't show up for the anonymous type, right? Because there's no way to reply to them. So we'll move the reply button down and just make it mark as read for the anonymous ones. And then these will have both options in them. And then for our message, we're just going to say, grab our text area in it and just say Max is the best teacher ever, but don't let him know that ever. And then we could just put in more text.
How did he get a double border? How did you get a double border on your table? You just put like another square around it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
And then we can drop these in and we'll show that like that one's not a red. And so because that one has already not been marked red, we can take out the mark as read button. And so that will be dependent on whether the message is read or not. Okay, I think this takes care of everything we need from a mock-up. Just wanted to rehash some of this so you guys have an idea of how to do your wireframes. Does not have to be in diagrams.net. It is not a requirement for your capstone, but I think you'll get into your code if you skip the wireframe step and realize how much of this is necessary. Yes, it's boring. Yes, it's tedious, but doing your wireframes, even if it's on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, is going to be super beneficial for helping you plan out all of your screens. Christy, question.
So the grid, okay, so I got the grid, but then I didn't get it to size down, but anyway. So is there a grid like this in preview? Like, can you put this in preview and then?
No, you're pushing the boundaries of what preview can do in there. What I would suggest is if you like preview a lot more than diagrams.net, try using Keynote. If it's not pre-installed on your Mac, it's a free download from the App Store. And Keynote is Apple's version of PowerPoint. So because Apple makes both preview and Keynote, you may find that Keynote is a more friendly tool to use.
Oh yeah, I have that on my, because I've even used that on my iPad. Okay. Okay.
This would probably be easier for me to do on the iPad now I think about it.
And that's also completely fine, right? The main step here is converting your requirements into something that you can then go out and code. And so because we've got a general idea of what this is going to look like, it's going to become a lot easier to code it out.
Thank you.
Any questions on this? Okay. So we're going to move forward with getting our project set up, and then we are going to call it an evening. So we are going to run screening from diagrams.net, and we are going to head to VS Code.
I would just take a picture.
And we're going to file open folder. And in the My Code, I'm going to create this in a day 3 folder, but you are welcome to create this in, create a capstone for this, or if you want to follow along, that's completely fine. And I'm going to pop that open, and I'm going to get started with my text file and save that and call it index.html. And then I'm also going to create my style.css.
Hold on, Max. This is for the wireframe. This is for the wireframe you just made?
Yes.
Okay, you just put it in what folder? And why?
I created it week 5, day 3. But you're welcome to because we're going to be reusing this file. You're welcome to call it like feedback app instead, if that makes more sense.
Instead of index HTML, use feedback HTML or?
Yeah, so very good question there. Index.html should actually be reserved for the page that they land on. The page that they land on is not going to be the dashboard. The page that they're going to land on is the page with the login button and information about the site and all of that. So instead of index.html, what I am going to use index.html, and I'm just going to say h1 and say info about app goes here. And then I'm going to add an A tag. And in that A tag, I'm going to say go to dashboard. And really, that should go to the login screen, and then the login screen should take us to the dashboard. But we want to just get our initial setup going here. So I'm going to go back to Chrome, and I'm going to go to Get Bootstrap. I'm going to get started. I'm going to copy the CSS link. I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to change my title to feedback app. And I'm also going to go back in, grab the JavaScript bundle, copy that, come back in and paste that. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my link. Rel is a style sheet, and I'm going to pull in my href to my style.css. And then I'm going to hit go live. Make sure that shows up in the right font.
Quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
You grabbed both the bundle and the CSS from Bootstrap?
Correct. Yep.
All right.
This CSS and this bundle, and put them.
Matter.
Go ahead.
Does it matter which one goes on top?
It does not.
Just...
It might. I would always put the CSS first, personally.
Okay.
And then last thing I want to do is I want to create my new file for my dashboard.html. I'm going to go to my index and copy everything in the index into my dashboard. I'm going to change my H1 to say dashboard goes here. I'm going to go back to my index and I'm going to make this a tag href to my dashboard. I will share all of this code in 1 second. And then I go to my feedback
you hear
app.
me?
Yeah, I can.
Sorry, I talk all the time. But mute.
The last thing I need to do is dashboard.html. Save that. Now I go to dashboard and I get my dashboard goes here. So that's the stopping point for tonight. But let me go back in. I'm not going to redo all of those steps, but I am going to type out the steps in Slack in case you want to catch up. So what we did is we created, you know what, let me just do it in the outline doc. So I'm going to say project setup. We created new folder in VS Code for project, create index.html, create style.css, link style.css in HTML head tag, in index.html head tag. Add bootstrap link from get started on getbootstrap.com. Add bootstrap JS bundle to head tag. Create dashboard.html. Copy index.html into dashboard file, update h1 text in dashboard to say dashboard. Add a tag to index.html to link to dashboard. And that's it. Simple. I will also share this code. Index. And dashboard. Okay. And if you're looking for the steps that we did, I documented them under project setup in the week 5 day 3 outline. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. If you would like to follow along with me, it's not a bad idea. Try and catch up with those steps. If you have any problems, let me know. Otherwise, this is it for the new content for tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to code out our dashboard and use Bootstrap. I will go probably a little bit slower than normal, only because it's our last day. And we really want to make sure that we're getting these concepts. So we're going to start using some Bootstrap components. We're going to get into tables, which is something we don't have a ton of practice with, but we should probably get a little bit more familiar with. So tomorrow we're going to dive in. We're going to get that dashboard page fully coded out. And then we are going to put this project on the shelf, because going into next week, you go into DevOps, right? And you go into getting your portfolio site deployed. So this weekend, getting your portfolio site done is going to be top priority, because going into next week, it's going to go live on the internet. So Nathan's going to walk you through that. He's going to walk you through DevOps. And right when you think you've had a nice break from me and you are done with me, I come back the following week and we dive right into JavaScript. things to be on the lookout for this weekend. We've got free code camp exercises coming your way that are prep work for week 7. We also are going to have a feedback. We're going to have a name submission. And tomorrow we will also touch on looking for domain names and finding a domain name that's available. That's coming tomorrow, along with our final day of review, working on this dashboard. And then we will head into the weekend. Office hours will be 5:30 to 6:30 on Friday, unless there is a big revolt and we need to change that for some reason. Okie doke. That's all I got. Christy, you stuck somewhere?
I was gonna say, can we have a big revolt about office hours being at 5:30 on Friday?
Would you like me to create a poll to see what time works best for everyone?
Yes, can we revisit?
Yeah, absolutely. I will create a poll that will be due tomorrow, and I will tell you when office hours will be tomorrow night.
Thank you. I just want to explore some other days just to see what comes up.
Not a problem.